Murder and telltale ghosts is what we'll be investigating in the next couple episodes of 31 Days of Halloween. And today on day 15, it's the chilling story of the Green Lady, who had a terrible secret that she could not keep even in death. The old tale goes that a peddler selling fabrics approached a grand house near Aberdeenshire in Scotland on a dark, stormy night. Bothered by someone calling at her gates at that hour, the lady of the house ordered her servants to send the man away. As he began to beg, the servants became more forceful and then violent. The poor peddler was murdered in the struggle. The lady was horrified and vowed to tell her husband and have the servants brutally punished, until she saw the peddler's money and large swathes of beautiful green silks. In her greed, she hid the gold behind a tapestry and had a dress made of the cloth. She said nothing to her husband and kept the death of the peddler a secret. However, that secret was to torment her in death. Unable to find peace, her spirit haunted her family, and one night she appeared to the family nurse, weeping and dressed head to toe in the green dress she had made from the peddler's cloth. Her ghost confessed her secret to the nurse and begged her to tell the family and find the gold she had hidden. When the nurse went to the hiding place behind the heavy tapestry, she found the stolen coins and told the Lord what had happened on that terrible day years earlier. The Green Lady was never seen again. Come back tomorrow for day 17 and another tale of murder and ghostly hidden crimes. See you then! A ghost that tormented its murderer? British ghost stories have it all. True crime, murder and hauntings. Continuing with our Usborne Book of the Haunted World today, we're travelling to Wales to uncover a grisly secret. In 1402, a nobleman named Owen Glyndwr visited Hwyl Sela in his stately home named Nanai. Owen was a military commander who led a 15-year-long Welsh revolt with the aim of ending English rule in Wales. He had come to ask for support fighting Henry IV. The men walked off into the garden discussing battle plans. But suddenly, Owen was seen riding away from Nanai in great haste. His companion Hwyl did not return to the house and was never seen again. His spirit haunted the house for 40 years, lost and unable to find peace, until one night there was a terrible storm and a bolt of lightning struck a tree, splitting it right down the middle. What emerged from the tree horrified the servants of the house. The skeleton of Lord Sela, still in the clothes in which he disappeared, spilled out of the split trunk. Lord Sela had refused Owen's request for military assistance, and in his rage, Owen had murdered Lord Sela and hidden his body in the tree's hollow trunk. After the skeleton was discovered, the Lord's ghost disappeared, never to be seen again. More murder and intrigue tomorrow on day 18, so I'll see you there with a nice cup of tea. This is a brutal one. We've got murder, intrigue, affairs and tragedy on day 18 of our 31 Days of Halloween with the tale of the unseen murder. Let's take a look. Get it? On a dark and stormy night in England 1575, a local midwife in Hungerford was readying herself for bed when she heard an urgent knock at the door. A carriage had stopped at her house carrying a maid from the nearby Grand Littlecote house. The lord of this house was William Darrell, notorious for his cruelty and recklessness. He was nicknamed Wild William. The maid insisted that the midwife come right away because there was a woman who was to have a baby. She retrieved her medical supplies and rushed out to the carriage, only to be shocked when a blindfold was put over her eyes to be worn all the way to the pregnant woman's room. The midwife delivered the baby safely, but was immediately blindfolded again, and the baby whisked from her arms. She heard the high-pitched screams and roar of the flames as the baby was thrown into the fire. A small bag of gold was placed in her hands, and she was roughly guided back out of the house, but not before she cut a square of cloth from the curtains and counted the stairs all the way down to the street. She went straight to the authorities to report what she had witnessed, and their investigations found the square of cloth matched the curtains in Littlecote House, and the number of stairs was exactly as the midwife had described. The mother of the baby had been a maid that William Darrell had seduced and coerced, and he had murdered the child in order to avoid discovery. He bribed his way out of any punishment, but 14 years later he was thrown from his horse, which spooked and reared at something unseen in the darkness, and broke his neck. Legend says that before he died, witnesses swore it was the ghost of his murdered baby, which appeared in front of the horse, condemning him to his death. Day 19, I can't believe it, I'm not ready for October to be over. Today we're delving into another realm of ghosts, but those of animals. Pets, beloved companions, and even portents of doom. In 1954, 7-year-old René Larrey from near Lyon in France was given a kitten as a gift from his parents. He loved the kitten so much that his parents dreaded telling him when it was run over by a truck outside of their home 1 month later. To their surprise, René was not at all sad, and insisted the kitten was still alive, playing with it, feeding it, and talking to it. He continued this for so long that they called in the help of a well-known paranormal investigator, who, when he arrived, was amazed to discover a picture of René with his kitten 3 weeks after it had died. The Black Shuck, Barghest, or the Grim are names that have been given to the well-known big black dog that appears as an omen of death. In one of these tales from Shropshire in England, the Vaughan family had apparitions of a huge black dog for centuries before a death in the family. Although Mr. Vaughan knew about this curse, he didn't tell his wife so as not to frighten her. But one day their child fell very ill with a mystery sickness, and as she went to tend to her sick child, Mrs. Vaughan came back screaming to her husband that there was a huge black dog sitting on their child's bed. Mr. Vaughan ran to the child's room in desperation, but he already knew what he would find. His child had died of their illness, and the canine apparition had vanished. Come back tomorrow for more animal tales, human transformation, and werebeasts. Day 20 of our 31 Days of Halloween series, and today we're continuing with the strange and unusual in the human and animal kingdoms. A common supernatural occurrence on all continents seems to be the existence of werebeasts, humans that can change at will or under certain circumstances into the terrifying forms of predatory creatures. Russia has famous tales of werebears. In India, people fear the were-tigers. South America is plagued by were-jaguars, and even were-crocodiles prowl the plains of North Africa. One particular legend in France tells the story of a boy called Jean Grenier, who claimed he could turn into a wolf, and told a court that he had eaten 50 children. He told them that he enjoyed it very much. In Germany, Peter Stump was arrested for murder and told the court that he had a magic belt that could turn him into a werewolf. The belt was never found, but he was still tortured and burned for his crimes. The famous urban legend in Russia says that a woman once went for a walk with her dogs and encountered a werewolf. Her dogs fought the beast, biting and wounding it, eventually tearing out its eyes. She returned home to find her servant clutching his eyes, which were bloodied and destroyed. Come back tomorrow where we'll be travelling over to North America and hunting the spirits that have haunted its history. Spooky tales and legends have been told in North America since long before the Europeans arrived, and all the way up to the modern day. And today, on day 21 of 31 Days of Halloween, we'll be going through the worst and most terrifying of these tales. Native Americans had a tradition where they would gather together around the campfire to tell many stories of ghosts and ghouls. telling the story of their people with a lesson or message. One of these stories tells of the ghost of the last of the Mohawk tribe, who is said to be seen paddling in a canoe up a river in the eastern USA, still looking for his people, who were slaughtered by the settlers from across the ocean. Another legend from more modern times swept the entirety of the USA, told slightly differently depending on where you are. The story goes that a man is driving on a long, dark highway at night in a raging thunderstorm. He sees a girl hitchhiking on the side of the road, soaking wet. He takes pity on her and offers her a lift, and passes her his jacket to keep her warm. When they reach her destination, however, the man looks back to find she has disappeared. He knocks on the door of the house they arrived at, and the elderly woman who answers the door tells him it was her daughter, who died at that spot many years earlier. The man goes to find the girl's grave the next day in the local cemetery, only to find, neatly folded on her grave, the jacket he had loaned her. No story about the ghostly terrors of North America would be complete without mention of the Bell Witch, who tormented the Bell family in Tennessee in 1817. She pulled bed covers, slapped members of the family, and would shriek and whistle at all hours of the night. Mr. Bell died suddenly in 1820, and the witch claimed credit, saying she had poisoned him. This was confirmed when they found a bottle of a smoky liquid that instantly killed their cat. The witch, satisfied with her work, disappeared, promising to return in 7 years, but there have been no sightings of her. Yet. Messages from beyond the grave are what we'll be deciphering today on day 22 of 31 Days of Halloween, with the spookiest spirits who could not rest until they had passed on their portents of doom. Ghosts often come to loved ones with warnings or announcements. In 1893, Lady Tryon's husband walked into her sitting room in London, to her amazement and shock, since she knew he was on board a ship in the Mediterranean. News shortly reached her that his boat had sunk. The spirit of the White Lady has haunted the Prussian royal family for 300 years, warning of a death in the family. And even when the palace burned down, the ghost was seen haunting the site where it once stood. In Ireland in the 1700s, Lord Tyrone and his sister made a pact to each other that if they were to die, their spirit would visit one more time before they passed on. One day, Lady Beresford went to her husband with a black ribbon tied around her wrist. She stated that she knew her brother, Lord Tyrone, had died, and that she was expecting a baby boy. News reached them shortly after that Lord Tyrone had indeed died, and some months later she gave birth to a boy. She never took off the black ribbon. Some years later she appeared to her guests at her birthday, the happiest she had been, proclaiming her 48th birthday to be the best ever. She was corrected, records indicating that she was actually 47. She ran, screaming from the room, stating, "You've just signed my death warrant." When her son followed her, she confessed to him that Lord Tyrone's ghost, along with announcing his death and her pregnancy, had predicted she would die in her 47th year, and when his ghost had touched her wrist, it had shriveled and blackened. Before midnight on her birthday, she died, and when her son removed the ribbon, he found her wrist withered, just as she had told him. Tomorrow, day 23, is a must-see. You will be waking the undead and exploring the realms of vampires. Don't miss it. We're moving away from spirits to dance with the undead today on day 23 of 31 Days of Halloween, and looking at the history of blood-sucking fiends. No, not politicians. Vampires. And stay tuned until the end because the last one is terrifying. Born in 1560, Countess Elizabeth Bathory in Hungary was accused of torturing and killing hundreds of young women. It was said that she would lure virgins into her trap so that she could bathe in their blood to remain eternally youthful. When she was convicted, she was locked up in one room of her castle to starve to death. Prince Vlad Dracula ruled Romania with an iron fist in the 1400s. The inspiration for Bram Stoker's Dracula, he earned his nickname Vlad the Impaler from impaling people on wooden stakes. He would nail people's hats to their heads and cut up his foes and make their families eat them. His bloodthirsty reputation made his castle a popular site for vampire tours. China has also been plagued by vampires for centuries. In the 1800s, a teacher named Lu was found dead by his wife one morning, his head cut from his body. She desperately ran for help, only for authorities to arrest her for the murder of her husband. A few months later, while villagers were passing through a graveyard, they found an open coffin, and what they saw inside horrified them. A grotesque, hairy vampire lying in the coffin, clutching Lu's severed head. They immediately burned the vampire and set Lu's wife free. Tomorrow we'll be investigating Europe and the thousands of years of death, torture, and hauntings. See you then. Face to face with the devil himself. What would you do? On day 24 of 31 Days of Halloween, we find out the unusual way that one man chased away the devil when he paid him a visit. Martin Luther was a churchman, well known for his opposition to the wealth and greed of the Catholic Church. He was fleeing many enemies he had made in his crusade when he took refuge in Wartburg Castle in southern Germany. One day, as Luther worked late into the night, he felt a chill as if someone were watching him. He turned from his desk to see a looming shadow on the wall, and he recognised it as the devil himself. Luther, having faced many foes, was unafraid, and threw the inkpot he was using to write directly at the shadow, and it disappeared into the night. The ink stain is still visible on the wall to this day. Number 12 West End Street in Holland has a terrifying secret that could not stay quiet. In the 1500s, Catherine de Chasseur spent so much money on her lavish lifestyle that she ran out of money and started making fake cash. When she was caught, she was sentenced to a horrifying death, to be filled up with water until she died. Everyone who has lived at number 12 has experienced terrifying phenomena. Blankets pulled off of beds, doors opening and shutting, and water thrown around, with taps left on to flood the house. Ghosts of the past came back to haunt the two English ladies that visited Versailles in 1901. They became lost in the gardens and came upon two gentlemen in long coats and three-pointed hats. Thinking it was strange, they carried on walking until they saw another man in a cloak and a large hat, with a scarred, ugly face. The atmosphere grew dark and ominous as he glared at them, and they hurried on around another corner. Sitting on the lawn, they saw a woman wearing a white hat, cape, and an old-fashioned dress, looking very distressed. They insisted that they had seen the ghost of Marie Antoinette when they recognised her from her portraits. He took orders from a captain to go and rescue survivors, but you'll never guess who they found when they got there. Day 25 of 31 Days of Halloween, and we're almost finished with the countdown to the day itself. Have you carved a pumpkin yet? Ghosts at sea can be particularly terrifying when you're trapped in the middle of the ocean, but this sailor didn't even realise he was talking to a ghost. In 1902, a ship called the Firebird was engulfed in flames and sank, leaving only 74 survivors to escape to the lifeboats. A nearby trading ship called the James Gilbert was sailing to Bombay when a captain with a horribly disfigured and scarred face entered the wheelhouse and urgently told the helmsman to steer northeast before disappearing. The change of course took them straight to the survivors, and when they were pulling bodies of the unfortunate souls who died in the fire out of the sea, they dragged out the body of a captain with a scarred face, which the sailor immediately recognised as the man who ordered him to change course. There's a legend in the Pacific Ocean of a ship that, if you see it, your ship and whole crew are doomed. The Liberanos is infamous among sailors, bathed in a red light and crewed by skeletons. It's said to be the ghost of a ship from 1871, which, when the captain forced its crew to sail through a terrible storm, a glowing apparition appeared to him. It warned him to turn back or face a terrible fate. The captain laughed at the spirit and shot his pistol at it. And in its anger, the ghost condemned the captain and all his crew to sail the seas for eternity. And anyone who saw their ship would be doomed to disaster. Several ships have reported seeing the Liberanos in the last century, and all suffered a terrible tragedy. The river ran red with blood, and the ghosts still replay their battle. Today I'm going to tell you 3 ghost stories of war where the soldiers never left the battlefield. In the American Civil War, the North and South fought brutal battles in their war for the United States. At Shiloh in 1862, 20,000 men died in one of the worst battles of the entire war. They say the river ran red with their blood, and the slaughtered soldiers have been seen replaying the battle ever since. In the 10th century, Vikings were landing on British shores, murdering and pillaging at every settlement. On the island of Iona in Scotland, they raided the abbey, killing all in their path and stealing the relics. Locals report the ghostly figures of Vikings still marching to the abbey, axes in hand. They can even describe what the Vikings stole and see the abbey burning. During the English Civil War, a particularly bloody battle occurred at Edge Hill in 1642 between Charles I and Oliver Cromwell. Villagers claimed they saw a ghostly version of the battle played out in the skies above the town. Charles I sent a team to investigate, and they saw it too. They even saw a ghostly version of Charles himself. The battle was seen played out for centuries on its anniversary and Christmas, although reports state that it is fading in recent years, like a worn-out recording. So what would you do if you saw that he claimed he was murdered in a previous life, and he had the scar to prove it? Here on day 27 of 31 Days of Halloween are 3 of the spookiest tales of reincarnation from the East. Ravi Shankar was a boy in the 1950s who claimed he was a reincarnation of a boy called Munna. One day he was walking with his parents when he suddenly froze. Trembling, he pointed and said, "That's the man who killed me." He claimed that in his previous life a barber and a washerwoman had murdered him with a jagged knife. To prove it, he had a long, puckered scar across his throat, which no one could explain. In Tibet, the Buddhist belief is that when you die, you are born again in another body. When the head of the Buddhist faith, the Dalai Lama, dies, he will be reincarnated as a young boy. They search for a boy that knows the previous Dalai Lama's possessions or trusted associates. The present Dalai Lama even knew where his predecessor kept his false teeth. In Tibet, it is also believed that you can summon up a spirit through intense meditation. In the early 1900s, a French journalist called Alexandre David Neal learned this skill and summoned the ghost of a fat monk. She enjoyed his company for a while before he became a nuisance. It took her 6 months to learn how to banish him. So would you believe him if, in December of 1900, a report was sent by the Fairwind ship that the lighthouse lamp had gone out on Ellen Moor, and that a crew of ghosts had been seen sailing past just 2 days before? Day 28 of 31 Days of Halloween, and today we're diving into the haunted waters of the far north of Scotland. Ellen Moor was a small island in the Outer Hebrides, named after St Flannan, who built a small chapel on the island for the shepherds who would bring their sheep to graze, but they would never stay the night because of the tales of spirits that haunted the shores. 3 lighthouse keepers had been manning the light when they suddenly disappeared. Joseph Moore, the relief lighthouse keeper, was sent to investigate, sailing to the island with Captain James Harvey, who refused to go ashore. What Joseph found was baffling. The men's coats and boots were missing. There was half-eaten food and an upturned chair in the kitchen, as if they had left in a hurry, and the clock on the wall had stopped. He suddenly felt a feeling of dread and wanted to run back to the ship immediately. He finally found the logbook and took it back to the ship. What they read was to terrify them. The entries were confused and fearful. They wrote of high winds, the like of which they had never seen before, but no unusual weather had been reported in the area. It was noted that one of the men had been completely silent for days, and the other had been uncontrollably weeping. The 3 men were never found, but locals say that the boat crewed by the dead that the Fairwind had seen was there to collect the men, and once they had joined the ghostly crew, the lighthouse lamp had gone out. She placed a curse on anyone who disturbed her tomb, and you'll never guess which epic disaster she caused. We're on day 29 and I can't believe it, we made it this far. This has been so fun. Today we're going to try and not be cursed by the mother of all cursers. Curse givers? Curse bearers? In the 1900s, a tomb was discovered with an elaborate sarcophagus inside, covered in gold and painted with the image of a beautiful Egyptian princess. It was the mummy of the Princess Amun-Ra. It was sold to 4 Englishmen, and within weeks they were all either dead or terribly ill. A London museum bought the sarcophagus and the curse grew even stronger. Whoever went near it died within days. A ghost expert studied the mummy and determined that the princess had placed a powerful curse upon her tomb, dooming anyone who disturbed her to a terrible tragedy. Witnesses reported ghostly moaning coming from the mummy at night, and strange banging emitting from the sarcophagus. Keen to be rid of the artefact, the museum immediately sold her to the highest bidder. This was an American archaeologist, who immediately booked passage for himself and the mummy to be transported back to America. The name of the ship they sailed on was none other than the Titanic. Tomorrow, All Hallows Eve's Eve, you must join me for the many and gruesome tales of death and hauntings that surround Henry VIII. I'll see you then. The spirits of those he doomed to death still come back to seek their revenge on the tyrant King Henry VIII. It's All Hallows Eve's Eve. Tomorrow it's costumes, pumpkins and candy, but today we're investigating those poor souls who met their demise at the hands of King Henry VIII and still haunt the living, looking for their revenge. A noble, Margaret Pole, Countess of Salisbury, was sentenced to death. Her son Reginald had opposed the king as head of the church in England, and she bore the terrible fate of death by association. An inexperienced executioner hacked at her a total of 11 times before finally decapitating her. Witnesses have said her ghost still replays her gruesome death every year on the anniversary. Henry's 3rd wife, Jane Seymour, tragically died 12 days after giving birth to his long-awaited son. Her mournful ghost has been seen wandering Hampton Court Palace, dressed all in white and carrying a lit candle, searching for revenge for the lack of care that was given to her in childbirth, allowing her to die horribly from infection. Poor Catherine Howard, only 17 when she was beheaded, also haunts the halls of Hampton Court Palace. Accused of adultery, she was sentenced to death, but ran screaming through the corridor of Hampton Court to beg for her life from her husband, before guards dragged her away. Her ghost is said to repeat this action over and over, her soul still desperate for absolution. The big day tomorrow, and I'll be going live from Greyfriars Kirkyard, the most haunted graveyard in Scotland, to tell some spooky tales of the ghosts who live there. Don't miss out. Happy Halloween and welcome to the last day of our 31 Days of Halloween series. I hope you managed to catch my live from Greyfriars Kirkyard, but even if you didn't, I have one last ghost story for you. The story to end all stories. Or storytellers. In the 1600s there was a famous storyteller from a small village in England. People came from miles around to hear his ghost stories by candlelight. He would tell tales of the ancients, of evildoers and malevolent spirits, ghosts from far-off countries, and restless bones that lay in the cemetery. On the last night he was seen alive, legend says there was a stranger amongst the listeners. The sky was clear and full of stars, and frost lay deep in the ground. With each story, one of his audience would silently stand up and blow out their candle. Pressing a coin into his palm, they would quietly retreat into the shadows, leaving him with his rapt audience. One by one they all left, until that one listener remained. Quiet and still, his head bowed as if in prayer. The storyteller saw the candles burning down to stumps, the coals fading in the fire, as he finished his last story. "That was the last one, my friend. It's time to leave." They say the listener raised his head, and horrified, the storyteller saw his skull-like face and blank, staring eyes. "No, it is the first," said the stranger, before the candle was blown out, and the hut was plunged into darkness. They say that on cold winter nights, if you see a candle burning deep in the woods, you can follow the glow and hear his story still. But if you stay too long and hear the last story, you might never leave again.